हरे कृष्ण। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवत्युत्तम श्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणं परमानन्दमाधवं श्रीचैतन्य ईश्वरम्। नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Welcome everyone to this Bhagavad Gita session where we try and go through the 108 important shlokas of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. No doubt all the 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita is as important as each other, but for sake of trying to focus our study, we are taking this 108 shlokas and trying to understand them a little bit more deeply. So today we are starting with the first shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, first chapter. First shloka is that we are going to start with. So the first shloka of the Bhagavad Gita, as you know, is spoken by Dhritarashtra. The first shloka of the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Dhritarashtra, and the shloka is like this. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samavetaya yutsava mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. The Bhagavad Gita actually starts with Dhritarashtra's question, which is, he is asking Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kima Kurvata Sanjaya. So, Dhritarashtra is asking to Sanjaya. Sanjaya is the assistant of Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra is posing this question to Sanjaya. He is asking, "Oh Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?" So, this is Dhritarashtra's enquiry to Sanjaya, his assistant. And why is Dhritarashtra making this enquiry? Dhritarashtra is making this enquiry to Sanjaya because basically Dhritarashtra is blind. He cannot see and understand things for himself. So he knows that all the people have proceeded to Kurukshetra. Both the Kauravas and the Pandavas have proceeded to Kurukshetra Yuyutsava, meaning they are ready for a fight. So Yuyutsava, having decided to fight, the two armies have proceeded to Kurukshetra. And he is asking, my sons, Mamaka, my sons, and Pandavas Chaiva, sons of Pandu. So, my sons and sons of Pandu, where have they gone? Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre. assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, Yuyutsava, desiring to fight. Kima kurvata Sanjaya? Oh Sanjaya, please tell me, what did they do? So this is Dhritarashtra's question. And now, to better understand this verse, we will also read the purport given by His Divine Grace Abhayacharan Aravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada says, Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is a perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when He was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmakshetra is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and the brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they were all very virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore, by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so, Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plans are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion Sri Krishna was present, the unwanted plans like the Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons headed by Yudhishthira would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharmakshetre and Kurukshetre apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Om Tat Sat. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the first shloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Why is this called the Bhagavad Gita as it is. That is very, very important for us to understand from the beginning when we study Bhagavad Gita. Srila Prabhupada made it very clear right from the beginning that this is a rendition of the Bhagavad Gita, a commentary given without any personal motivation. There is no hidden personal agenda behind presenting this Bhagavad Gita. This Bhagavad Gita presented, the Bhagavad Gita as it is presented by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, is as it is, as Arjuna understood it from Krishna. This is as it is, as understood by Arjuna hearing Krishna. So, whatever Krishna speaks, the direct inferred meaning is only explained here by Prabhupada. So, Prabhupada says here in the beginning of the purport to the first verse itself that the best way to understand Bhagavad Gita is what? The best way to understand Bhagavad Gita is given in the Gita itself. That is, in the way how Arjuna understood it. He heard it directly from Krishna, and in what way Arjuna understood this, same way we should also understand this. And the very first verse, there are questions raised by Dhritarashtra which makes Dhritarashtra's mentality very clear to us. Dhritarashtra's mentality becomes very clear for the reader of the Bhagavad Gita right from the first shloka. And what is that mentality? The mentality of Dhritarashtra is that everything for my sons, nothing for everybody else. That is his attitude. And that same attitude was presented to his son, and who actually took it to another level, in the sense that Dhritarashtra already had so much of a venomous heart, and his son, because of the father's nature plus how he spent time with his father and with his uncle, so this Duryodhana also had similar devious intentions, and that is the reason why it has come to this war. We must always understand this. Because as we are speaking this studying of Bhagavad Gita, there are a lot of people out there in the world asking questions as to why did Krishna have to arrange a war and then kill all these people and then give Bhagavad Gita? You know, to give Bhagavad Gita in a war field and making Arjuna kill all these people and thus establish dharma. Was that necessary? Because today somebody sent me a meeting link. You know, they have called for an open debate as to why Krishna did not give this teaching to Duryodhana first and make him a good man and avoid this war altogether. So they are challenging, would you like to come and take part in this discussion? You know. So somebody called me and they said, would you like to take part? I said, no. He asked me why, are you afraid? I said, no, I am not afraid. I said, just as Krishna knew that Duryodhana would never listen to reason, and Krishna tried reasoning with him, he did not listen, ended up in the war. And I am very clear about it. And I said, whatever I speak to these people, they are the modern Duryodhanas and they are not going to accept it anyway. So, why would we waste our time? You know, we are interested to discuss this wonderful subject matter of the Bhagavad Gita with those people who are genuinely interested in understanding the Bhagavad Gita. Because Prabhupada very clearly says how to study the Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada is saying that it is already given in the Gita Mahatmya. And what are the points Prabhupada is giving? He is telling us we should study the Bhagavad Gita scrutinizingly. Means very nicely we should scrutinize every point given in the Bhagavad Gita and try to understand it. And how scrutinizingly? With the help of devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. This is very, very important. We should study Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly, and we should study it in the company of, with the help of devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. And what next? Without any personally motivated interpretation of the Bhagavad Gita. So, scrutinizingly, in the company of, under the guidance of devotees, and without any personal motivation, and that which comes through a disciplic succession of the devotees of Lord Sri Krishna. You see? So, scrutinizingly, in the company of, under the guidance of devotees, without any personal motivation, and through a disciplic succession. So, this is how we must understand Bhagavad Gita. Now, take the other side. If you try to understand Bhagavad Gita without any of these factors, that is, without the help of a devotee of Krishna, without, with somebody's personally motivated commentary, without any disciplic succession, that is, without a teacher who is teaching you and he does not have a teacher. Okay? What will happen? What will happen is, just as I said now, at the end of studying Bhagavad Gita, you may ask this question, why didn't he teach this to Duryodhana and make him a good man and avoid the war? You see? We will have this kind of thinking that I am asking a very intelligent question, but a very, very unintelligent question it is actually. Why? Because if the person who is teaching or if the person who is sharing Bhagavad Gita, he does not accept Krishna's supremacy, then it becomes just like any other academic book. You see? And believe you me, there are a lot of academicians also discussing subject matters given in the Bhagavad Gita. You see? But they are all those kind of people who, like the Prabhupada quotes the Archbishop of Canterbury, who made a statement that people want kingdom of God without God. People want kingdom of God because they read that, this is as per Bible. They read all the great and good things in heaven, kingdom of God, and they want all those things. They want to go there, but they don't want God to be there. Why? Because they don't want the control of God. Similarly, personally motivated commentators and big pundits who don't accept the supremacy of Krishna, they will teach Bhagavad Gita without Bhagavan. And Prabhupada and all the Sampradaya Acharyas make the point that this whole thing becomes so valuable because it is spoken by Bhagavan. Because it is spoken by that person who is Achyuta. Because the Bhagavad Gita is spoken by Achyuta, Krishna, who does not have the tendency to fall. That is why Bhagavad Gita is valuable. Otherwise, your Gita, my Gita, everybody's Gita is there. Give each one of us a chance, we will all speak more than 700 verses. 7,000 verses also each one of us will speak. Especially if it is glorifying our own selves, we can speak unlimitedly, we can speak. But that is, Shastra says, that is like croaking of a frog. Because the only purpose the croaking of a frog serves is to attract a snake to eat it. Similarly, if we speak our own nonsense, it only serves the purpose of bringing death closer to us, nothing else. So we must listen to Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because it is spoken by Bhagavan. Gita means something. Gayanti Gita. So Bhagavan's song, let us say. Bhagavad Gita. The song of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, accepting Krishna's supremacy, one must study Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada uses the word approaching the Bhagavad Gita. You know? Approaching the Bhagavad Gita. When you say, when will you use this term, approaching somebody? You know, you always approach somebody with respect. You approach somebody in a position of authority. You approach a guru, you know. So, similarly, we must approach the Bhagavad Gita with all humility, because it is actually the words that are spoken from the words emanating from the lotus mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is the same person who originally spoke all the Vedas. Same person who originally spoke the Vedas directly to Brahma, that self-same personality is now speaking to Arjuna. That is the Bhagavad Gita. So the prelude is the two armies that have assembled in Kurukshetra. And Kurukshetra, right from the Vedic times, is considered to be a Dharma Kshetra. You will find in various Puranas, in other Vedic literature, how lot of pious people assemble in Kurukshetra, especially during for Tarpana on eclipse days and all auspicious days. People gather in Kurukshetra to offer Pinda, to offer Tarpana, to offer Dana to the Brahmanas. So it is generally a place where lot of dharmic activities take place. And that place has been selected for this war. And now Dhritarashtra's question and his concern is basically because, why? Because his mind is very, very fearful. Kurukshetra is a sacred place. Kurukshetra is a holy place. It is a Dharma Kshetra. And personally, the giver of Dharma, the one who enunciates Dharma, where is he situated? He is acting as the charioteer of Arjuna, who is in the opposite party. You see, this is Dhritarashtra's greatest worry. That war has been decided. Yuyutsava, they have made up their mind and they are gone for war. That means there is no returning back. And Dhritarashtra also, Prabhupada is commenting in the verse that Dhritarashtra also does not want them to go back now. He doesn't want them to retreat, either party to retreat from the war and make some kind of peaceful settlement. That also he doesn't want. You see, this is the mentality of a typically materially attached personality. You know, when our material attachment gets so strong and our conditioning becomes, that you are bound to that material conditioning, it becomes so strong that even when you see that you are not going in the right direction, you will not be able to check yourself. Even as a person can see that he is going towards his destruction, he is not able to help himself. You will see this kind of extreme cases, you will see people who are addicted to drugs, people who are addicted to alcohol, people who are addicted to various things. Many people think that, they are so addicted they don't know. No, actually they also know. They know that they are, they are like flies flying into the fire, they know they are, but they are not able to control themselves. Similarly here, Dhritarashtra's mind has come to such a state that even though he is fearful that his sons are going to die in this war, he still wants the war to take place. Because he wants, even if there is a very small chance of my sons winning, let them win and let them keep all the property for themselves. You see? So material conditioning does this to people. And that is one of the reasons why, in spite of so many material reverses, why are we getting this impetus to work? It is because we are thinking that at least now, next time let me have a small victory at least. You see? And that elusive small victory keeps us on this path of materialism. On the other hand, we are also fearful of failure. Why? Because materially we all have failed repeatedly several times. Through various births, thousands and millions of janmas, we have materially failed and failed and failed. Some small victory, some big failure, some small victory, some big failure. We know we have gone through this. But the conditioning is so strong that we would want to continue with that endeavor. So Dhritarashtra is actually here, we can see when we study Dhritarashtra's whole psyche, we will be able to see ourselves in Dhritarashtra. It's very easy to, say that Acharyas speak that Dhritarashtra was not only materially blind, he was actually spiritually blind also. Very correct. So are we. We are materially not blind, but spiritually very, very blind. You see? That is what gives us impetus to carry on with our material activities. So Dhritarashtra is asking Sanjaya, what did they do? You see, very typical materialistic. That on one hand I am afraid, on the other hand I want to do. You see? So on one hand he is afraid of his sons losing the war. On the other hand, he does not want them to come back without war also. Very typical. And why is that fear? Fear is because it is Dharma Kshetra, and he knows deep in his heart that Dharma is on the side of the Pandavas. He knows that Dharma is not on the side of his sons. He knows these things very clearly. Because all these Kuruvamsha kings, everybody has undergone all the training in the Vedas and the Samhitas, and they know what is correct, they know what is wrong. It is not that they don't know. They know, but because of their nature, they are not able to do the right thing. Because of the nature, they are not able to do the right thing. So, it has resulted in this war. So, the war is about to begin, and he is very, very worried. And because of the war, we are getting Bhagavad Gita. Right? Because if there was no war, how would we learn Bhagavad Gita? Right? Same subject matter is spoken by Krishna to Uddhava, but that is just before Krishna completes his Ihaloka Leela and going back to Swadhamopagade. Just before that, he speaks almost similar subject matter to Uddhava. Towards the end of Srimad Bhagavatam, all of you must be familiar. If not, it is in the final cantos of the Srimad Bhagavatam. There is something called Uddhava Gita, where practically the same subject matter gets discussed between Krishna and Uddhava. But if we were getting Bhagavad Gita or that same knowledge only in that context, we wouldn't take it so relevant to our own selves. You see? Because that is just before the Lord is leaving, he is giving some, teachings. Like that we will take it. And it is given to the Lord's, nephew. He is very close to the Lord. And there is a completely different scenario. There is a completely different scenario where Krishna is speaking Uddhava Gita to Uddhava. But here in the battlefield, things are very, very different. Because a battlefield is where thousands of people die. And it is not an easy decision that they have taken. It is not at all an easy decision for somebody, especially like Yudhishthira, who is such a peace-loving person. He stands by dharma all the time. He is almost like a borderline Kshatriya. He is almost like a Brahmana. Among the 5 Pandavas, if you take, the most peaceful one is Yudhishthira, and he happens to be the eldest. And whether they like it or not, the younger brothers have to listen to him all the time. So with great difficulty, Yudhishthira has taken this decision of taking part in the war. And that war is going to decide how dharma is going to be re-established. And that is also Dhritarashtra's worry, because dharma personified is standing on the Pandava side. Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. Whatever the Lord enunciates, that is dharma. So that enunciator of dharma, who is Krishna, he is on the Pandava side. So dharma is going to be re-established through the medium of this great war in Kurukshetra. That this great war in Kurukshetra is something Krishna is going to use as a medium to re-establish dharma. And he is going to use Arjuna as an instrument in re-establishing this dharma. So, although it has been designed like this by Krishna, we must know that every effort was made to avert the war, because Yudhishthira will not have it any other way. Right? Including showing one Vishwarupa to Duryodhana, Krishna tried. Right? Even one mini Vishwarupa he showed to Duryodhana. So immediately what did Duryodhana think? He said that, Krishna, you are a big magician, I know. You know, you are a big, you know how to play all this Maya, so I will not believe you. You see. So there are some people are like that, you know. Even after seeing Vishwarupa, they will not realize. So what is the big point in trying to give him more philosophy? Right? Shastra is meant for those people who have the intelligence to use their intellectual capacity and understand things. And those people who don't understand at that level, for them only Shastra is used. Shastra means weapon. You know. Shastra means instructions, nicely giving instruction. If you don't listen, if you don't come to your senses by hearing Shastra, then the Lord is forced to take up Shastra, means weapon. So, as far as Duryodhana is concerned, Shastra already tried and given up, and finally only taken the choice of Shastra. So, we must understand. Because right from the beginning, we must understand that this war is not some warmongery on the part of God. You know. Because this is like a haunting question that will come to many people. Why should have been there a war at all, you know? Couldn't Krishna use some other method to establish this whole thing? He could have done so. No. Because when adharma comes to that stage, and when the powerful adharmi cannot understand, you cannot reason with him beyond a point. So, then the only language he understands is war. So, you are left with no choice but to engage in war. And let us not get it mixed up with our current day wars, you know. Our present day wars are nothing but somebody's ego being boosted, that's all. You know, every war that we study in history, or we continue to see, or even in the recent past, or even up to the Second World War, you see, somebody wanted to satisfy his ego, you know, run his army through some land. That kind of nonsensical war what we are seeing. But never compare that with what happened in Kurukshetra. So, Kurukshetra war was singularly for re-establishing dharma only. That is why dharma kshetre Kurukshetre. So, in the dharma kshetra of Kurukshetra, this war is going to happen. And dharma will be re-established. Already the indication is there, because Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna. You know. And the acharyas are speaking that all the indications of victory are there already with Arjuna. Krishna is riding the chariot has been given by Agni, and he has got that quiver and arrow that is given by other devatas. He has got Hanuman sitting on his flag, you know. Everything is auspiciously set for Arjuna. It is like Arjuna's side is loaded. The war is loaded in Arjuna's favor even before the first arrow is shot. You see? although the numbers are there higher on the other side. You see, this is another great example that we see, we study. When we study Duryodhana, we understand how the materialistic mind works. Because Duryodhana was very happy to get more and more armies onto his side. That is why when Krishna told him, either I will come with you or I will give you my Narayani Sena. And immediately Duryodhana's both eyes popped out, you will give me the army? Really, you will give me the army? I'll take it. Why? Because Krishna himself says, my Narayani Sena, never defeated in war till date. I will give you that. And even if I come, I will not fight. I will not take weapon. So both ways, Duryodhana is thinking, okay, I will get people. You see? So the calculations say that it was 7 to 11, They had 7 Akshohinis on Pandava's side and 11 Akshohinis on Duryodhana's side. So you are outnumbered 7 to 11. Who? The Pandavas. But in the final equation, did it matter at all? The final equation, these things don't matter. The final equation, it only matters whether you are on Krishna's side or not. And Arjuna, he was very intelligent. He understood that what matters is Krishna's presence with me. If Krishna is present with me, then victory is on my side. It all depends on how you define victory. But Duryodhana was very confident before the war because he had more number of people, more army, more Maharathis, After this first shloka, Duryodhana will very wonderfully glorify his generals, First he will speak about generals on the Pandava side. He will say, there is this Bhima is there, Arjuna is there and all those people. Then he will start saying, we have Bhishma Pitama, we have Dronacharya, we have Kripacharya. He will speak about all these great personalities. He will say, we are undefeatable army, he will say. This is typically materialistic conception of what is success and what is failure. So he thought that having more people on my side, I am safe. You see? So the materialist is always thinking that the more material possession I have, somehow I am safer. You see? So the materialistic mind basically, it takes shelter of materialistic possessions. Spiritually inclined personalities will take shelter of Krishna. So Arjuna and the Pandavas, by nature they are very virtuous people. So they said, you give army to Duryodhana, you give anything to him. Just you be there on our side. But I won't take any weapon. That doesn't matter. You are there with us, more than enough. Frankly, they wouldn't even mind losing the war as long as Krishna is on their side. Why? Because as Kunti said, whenever they had a difficulty, whenever the Pandavas faced any difficulty, Krishna always came there and gave a solution to that difficulty. You see? That is why Kunti Devi in her prayers, she would say that, please give us more and more difficulty so that every time there is a difficulty, you will come. So, like Kunti's prayer is very, very interesting in the sense that she says, If it is that you will come to us only when we have a problem, then let us have a problem every day, so you will come to us every day. You see, this is when somebody is spiritually inclined, this is how they think. That what I need is my Lord with me. So Arjuna is also thinking, before the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna does not even realize that Krishna is his Lord. Simply they loved Krishna. He was their cousin, and for every problem he was their troubleshooter. That was his role previously, right? So Arjuna was just, you be with me, that's it. So Arjuna chooses Krishna. Duryodhana chooses everything other than Krishna. This is how you contrast these two people, these two personalities. You see? So this is how the two armies are arrayed in Kurukshetra. And Srila Prabhupada in his purport uses another analogy. He uses the analogy of a paddy field. Kshetra also means field. So Kurukshetra is one field. It is a dharma kshetra. A kshetra, a field of dharma. And who is there? The Dharma Pitamaha, who is Krishna, is there. And so he is seeing the Dharma Kshetra, the field of Dharma, and he is deciding whatever is not Dharma. That is, when you are tending to a field, when you are tending to a field, if you are a farmer, you will see, what is your crop, you also know what is your weed. So what will you do? You want your field to grow nicely, the crops should grow nicely, you have to remove the weeds. So Prabhupada says, Krishna, the master farmer, who is now seeing the field, the Dharma Kshetra, the field, he is seeing whoever is Dharmi, I will keep him. Whoever is Adharmi, I will remove him. So, as far as Krishna is concerned, this whole Kurukshetra war is designed so that he will remove the weed of Adharma. That's it. As far as Krishna is concerned, it is that simple an exercise, that remove the weed and let the crop grow. What is the crop? The crop is Dharma. So the Dharma is now getting affected negatively because this Adharma is there. So remove all the Adharma, let Dharma prosper very nicely. So the whole setup is arrayed, two armies are arrayed, and Krishna will, from chapter 2 only, the instructions of Bhagavad Gita starts. So first chapter is just an introduction or a prelude to the instructions that are going to come. So in the rest of the chapter, in chapter 1, we see how Arjuna will get very sentimental about the whole thing, and we have already previously discussed, Arjuna's reasons for not wanting to fight the war, because it is all his relatives. Why would I kill them? Sin will overcome me, and all these men will die in war, and all the women will become polluted. They will have unwanted progeny, and when all these men die, and then they don't have children, so there will be nobody to offer pinda. So Arjuna will give all these kinds of very wonderful looking reasons for not fighting the war. But in the beginning of the second chapter, Krishna, when he starts instructing Arjuna, we will also understand why Arjuna's thinking was completely flawed. So that is another example we take from Arjuna, that although we make many arguments which sound very intelligent, sound very very sound arguments, but they will actually be very, very poor in substance, because most of our arguments, most of our thinking, the entire thought paradigm that we have is all based on this material body attachment. Srila Prabhupada calls this the skin disease. That everything through the skin we perceive, So skin disease, Prabhupada uses the word. That is somebody, oh, this one I know. Actually, how do you identify all these people? Somebody with this face, with this height, with this, whatever. Beyond that proper identification we don't have. So every dealing of ours with everyone else around us is based on that bodily conception only. And based on that, we judge, we go through emotions, we become sentimental, we argue, So, to make us understand, Arjuna will play that role, of the totally deluded, totally confused, sentimental, and sounding very, very intelligent, very compassionate. But Krishna will prove each and every one of those arguments wrong. So, by studying those, we will also understand where we stand as a confused living entity and what are our confusions based on, and how those confusions can be cleared, and how we can be established on proper understanding as it is. You see, that is why it is called the Bhagavad Gita as it is. There is no personal agenda of anyone being pushed in Bhagavad Gita. It is Krishna's agenda. That is the only agenda in the entire Bhagavad Gita. Krishna's points and Krishna's instructions. And anybody who understands Bhagavad Gita in that way will become a successful student, just the way Arjuna understood it. But it has to come through a Guru Parampara. Why? Because for anything you need a Guru, somebody to teach you properly. Only when you're taught properly, you can share it properly. Only then that person can share it properly. And that original Guru, Chaitya Guru or Adi Guru, is Krishna. And from the Supreme Lord, He has given the knowledge to so many great and wonderful personalities. And through them, there are disciples and their disciples and their disciples and their disciples. Like that, this knowledge is coming down. And we need to receive it like that, from top to bottom. This is the way of receiving spiritual knowledge. The best way to receive it is the descending process. Means somebody who has already understood it gives it to us, so we will understand it properly. So that is the effort that we are making here, to try and understand the Bhagavad Gita through 108 important verses. So today we have covered the first verse of the first chapter. Hare Krishna. Thank you.